नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते नारायणाय। ॐ नमो भगवते नारायणाय। शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। अनन्तसंसारसमुद्रतार नौकायिताभ्यां गुरुभक्तिदाभ्यां वैराग्यसाम्राज्यदपूजनाभ्यां नमो नमः श्री गुरुपादुकाभ्याम्। अञ्जनानन्दनं वीरं जानकी शोकनाशनं कपीशमक्षहन्तारं वन्दे लङ्काभयङ्करं। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। यदङ्घ्रिपङ्केरुगरेणुलग्नं निपीय नीरं विमलन्तरङ्गः जानामि तत्त्वं निजमात्मरूपम्। जानामि तत्त्वं निजमात्मरूपम्। तं नौमि नारायणतीर्थमार्यम्। तं नौमि नारायणतीर्थमार्यम्। Namaskaram, all of you. Welcome to the 52nd session of Krishna Leela Tarangini. You may remember that in the last session, 51, while introducing the Tarangam 7, we also noticed Tirtha explaining how and why Sri Krishna teaches the gopis the Atma Tattva to identify the supreme truth. We were able to appreciate the first 8 stanzas out of the 20 pearls of Vedanta as the Prathama Gita of Sri Krishna, this time beginning with gopis. You may also remember that in the 8th stanza, Krishna responds to the question of the gopis when they asked him, "O Krishna, kindly explain why a mortal Jivatman does not realize when it wakes up in another birth that he or she was united previously with Sat or the Brahman." Krishna answered, "Yatra jaladau samarasattvamanu yataha tatpritagasesha saridona vidurevam brahmani jana anudinam samanu yataha tattvam avadharayata satyamiti mam om." Just as all rivers without exception cease to be known by their individual names once they have reached the final place, namely the egalitarian waters of the ocean, individual souls constantly reach the state of the Brahman, losing their individuality and merging in it. Every time they take a birth. And once the birth is finished, and if they have to come back again, this happens like the cycle that we explained as to how water was going up, coming down, going through the rivers, and having its confluence with the ocean, and going back again as vapor. But Krishna said, instead of getting confused as to the process, comprehend me as that principle, namely Om, and as truth. Then this would become very easily understandable to you. Krishna amplifies it that the mind, senses, and body are all there to perform miracles even after awakening from Shushupti and before going back to Shushupti. That lack of self-realization, the Jivatman had merged with Sat, is the cause of repeated births and deaths. It's not the other way about. If Jivatman merged with Brahman and again it has to come back again, take yet another birth, the cycle of repeated births and deaths was caused by the lack of self-realization. Otherwise, the Jivatman would have been permanently embedded in Brahman. It wouldn't have come out. Therefore, knowing me, not as a cowherd, but as Krishna, the Brahman, as the essence of Omkara and the supreme essence of the real Sat, you would then understand that my form is nothing but yours, and your form gives you that ultimate realization to feel the oneness with me. You won't have any of these material confusions. We will now listen to the next 4 stanzas. The first 8 brought us to a point, and now the next 4 are actually building blocks on those 8 stanzas. We will listen to them first now.
यस्य कलयायमखिलस्य सखि भोक्ता तत्परिहृतो मृत इति प्रतिवदन्ति यच्च भावमृत्युरहिकलसाक्षी तत्त्वमवधारयत सत्यमिति मामो यत्र च विजृम्भितमिदं स्वगतशक्त्या स्वापृथगवस्थितं शेषजडजातं यच्च वडबीजसदृशं परमसूक्ष्मं तत्त्वमवधारयत सत्यमिति मामं सिन्धुजनितं सलिलमिश्रितमिवात्म सर्वगत एकरसतामनुगतोऽयं वेदशिरसं परिचयेन सुविविक्त तत्त्वमवधारयत सत्यमिति मामं भक्तनयनो वनभुवि प्रतिविमुक्त प्रश्नमुपलभ्य नगरं पुनरपाप यद्गुरुमतं पुनरपाप निजबुद्ध्य तत्त्वमवधारयत सत्त्वमिति मामो.
यस्य कलयायम अखिलस्य सहि भोक्ता तत्परिहृतो अमृत इति प्रतिवदन्ति यच्च भव मृत्युहरि तत् सकल साक्षी तत्त्वमवधारयत सत्यमिति माम ओम. That's the stanza 9. The gopis then ask the next question. As you see in the summary meaning of the stanza being projected on the slide, let me go past that summary meaning. The gopis' question was this: O Krishna, you said that just like the rivers merge into the ocean, Jivatmans merge without difference or distinction into the finale known as Sat. Like in the ocean, the big waves, small waves, wavy foam, small bubbles, and all of them, irrespective of size and form, disappear. So, will the living beings perish like the big and small and foamy waves? If your example is right, so all these waves, irrespective of the size, will they also perish? And thereby, when they perish, the living beings are also like that. Will we perish? Or they will not perish and will have separate identities even though they have merged into the main waves? The greatest of devotees, gopis, prayed to Krishna to preach them the secret or the rahasya behind that question. Krishna then laughs and says to the gopis, yes, listen now. I have an answer for you on that. Some humans take births as trees as a result of the sins done in their previous births. I'll give you an example, then you can understand. In other words, when somebody has done some good deeds and they are born as humans, but when they do a bunch of sins and they cannot avoid the punishment, they end up coming back not as human beings, but as trees. Let's take it that way. Such trees survive and grow by taking substratum water and all other nutrients through their roots, first reaching to the green shoots, leaves, flowers, fruits on small branches, and then fruits and bigger branches, and they grow huge into very big trees with the branches getting thicker by the day. When some branches are severed by knife, pick or axe, etc., the branches no doubt bleed, just like the human body. But if one branch is cut off from the main tree, just like a jiva losing interest in mundane life, when the love in life is gone, the branch of the tree also will not grow again. But remember, it is only the branch of the tree, not the tree per se. The tree, however, survives with the help of all other branches because which are all active, it's not been cut. In this way, even when most of the branches are cut, severed, or if they have really grown to a point where they needed to be weeded and the branches get weeded off, the tree manages to survive with the available rest. Just like Jivan losing lots of its component forms of life and losing love or interest in survival, the tree also, after losing all its branches, slowly collapses. When every one of the branches of the trees has already met with its death, the tree has no reason to survive anymore and it collapses. But see the distinction here. The Jivan in the tree, even after the tree loses all its branches and roots, perish, but does not perish. Therefore, know this, that the living beings, even though they are mixed in the auspiciousness or sushupti of life, these living beings do not perish at that moment, but hold on to the Brahman for continuum. Therefore, without birth and death, all illuminating, the essence of Omkara is my supreme being and Sat is my form. You will definitely understand that if you know my form and not as a cowherd. Here, Tirtha seems to have taken this answer from Chandogya Upanishad once again, and let's look at the background or the source from which Narana Tirtha took this and made it into a stanza. So it is Chandogya 6.11.1, followed by the second and third sloka. So let's see all the three slokas as projected on the screen. You will see that Uddalaka explains to his son. So in sum and substance, Uddalaka says, when the self leaves the body surely dies. The self, however, never dies. That which is the subtlest of all is the self of all this. It is this truth, and thereby it is the truth. What is truth? It is the self. In other words, that thou art. Tat tvam asi. Then Swetaketu says, sir, kindly amplify this to me again, because it's a little bit confusing. You say that when the branches are dead, the tree is dead, but you also say the tree is not completely dead. And you're linking it up with Jivatmans when they lose interest and they just go into Brahman again. All this is confusing to me. Can you explain again? Uddalaka says, yes, Somya, I will explain it again. Bhagavan Vijñāpayatviti iti tata somyeti ho vacha. What does this all mean? The self is immortal. It is the body that dies. And it dies when the self leaves it. Krishna is going to say this to Arjuna very soon in Bhagavad Gita. Nainam chindanti shastrani nainam dagati pavakaha. Na chainam kledayantyapo na soshayati marutaha. The soul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, not burned by fire, nor moistened by water, not withered by the wind. Achedyoyam adahyoyam akledyo asosyayevacha. Nitya sarvagataha sanuhu achaloyam sanatanaha. The next sloka in Bhagavad Gita In other words, 24th sloka in chapter 2 is this individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble and can be neither burned or dried. In other words, it's an amplification of the previous sloka. This is what repeatedly Krishna explains to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. But as a prelude to all that, to gopis, Krishna explains this, and Narayana Tirtha brings it in stanza 9, based on the Chandogya Upanishad Vakyam 1, 2, and 3 of the 11th chapter. Suppose you go to sleep leaving some of your work incomplete. As soon as you wake up, you remember that it was not finished, and you immediately start doing the work from where you left off if you are under such a great pressure. Your sleep was like the death of your body, for it made you inactive and you were totally unconscious of your body or your state at which you went to sleep. But the self or the Jivan never dies. And that is why when you wake up, you remember your work was unfinished and you are also able to pick up from where you left. Whether you are awake or asleep, you are the same Atman, even though many people describe sleep as death. So you temporarily died during the process of your sleep and then woke up. But you are the same Atman because you are in a continuum. The self never changes. You may have seen how a newborn kitten, albeit blind, behaves as if he knows where the mother is. It also knows where to get its mother's milk. You would see that the kitten is absolutely blind at birth. It doesn't know anything that's happening. But one thing it knows, how to slowly crawl and get to the mother and get the milk to satisfy its hunger. No one teaches that small creature. But how does it know? Because it knows from its past life. This is what scholars say, the great sages say. Because that is the soul in search of what it needs, and it gets because it really searches and approaches. In the next stanza, Yatra cha vijrumbidamidam swagata shaktya swapratagamastitamasesha jadag jatam yaccha vata bija sadrisham parama sukshmam tattvam avadharayata satyamiti mamom. The gopis then asked Sri Krishna, all the worlds such as the earth with a name, form, and the greatest of all worlds originate from the supreme substance of Sat, which is nameless, formless, and imperceptible to the senses. How do you think we can understand this phenomenon or secret? We are simple folks. Lord Krishna gives a simple answer. If you are bamboozled by the earlier answers, since your question is a simple question, I will give you a simple answer. Okay, right in front of all of you, here before us is a banyan tree. It is spread with hundreds of branches, spreading hundreds of big and small branches on the earth, full of leaves, flowers, and fruits. What you see is a huge canopy hiding everything, but it is a single tree. Under this tree, many a times, a king and his commanders train king's army of chariots, elephants, and horses and foot soldiers. That is the width of the tree, and that is how this tree has grown into mammoth size. But when you crack open the very small fruit of such a mammoth tree, namely the banyan tree, look at the seed. You see the fruit? The mammoth tree's fruit reveals, nevertheless, hundreds of seeds like small atoms. But when one of those atoms or seeds was broken, just to know what is inside, nothing was found. However, from that very atom, namely one simple small seed out of thousands in a fruit, this great tree had arisen and grown as this mammoth banyan tree. Thus, from the nameless, formless, smallest atom is born the largest Sat. All the words with name and form, the earth, etc., arise and exist in itself and are non-differentiated from it. This truth of the banyan seed is well suited to our cosmic understanding. Therefore, the real Sat is the supreme cause of the whole and the meaning of Omkara. And please therefore know, that is my form. I am Omkara, I am Sat, and that is the real form. Realize beyond doubt that you are therefore my form, and what you see in me is what you are. Of course, Nanatirtha followed Chandogya, Sloka 2 of the chapter 12 in the main 6th Anuvaka. Tamho vacha Yam vai somyaitam animanam na nibalayasai tasya vai saumyesho animnayevam mahani agrodaha tishtati shraddhasva somyeti. That is the basis for this stanza and the elaboration I gave you. How do you know that the essence is there in the tiny seed? Well, put the seed in the ground, nurture it for a while, you will see very soon a sprout will appear. Even if you don't do anything, the rain will take care of it, sun will take care of it, the climate will take care of it. All of a sudden, you will see a sprout. Then that sprout will grow and gradually become a huge banyan tree. Though there seems to be nothing inside the seed, the essence of the tree must be there. That's what you need to understand. Otherwise, a tree could not grow from it. This is not only true of banyan seed and banyan tree, this is true of every plant that grows from a seed, however small it is, because the entire tree is within the seed. Oh, my son, have Shraddha. Please have faith, my son. Faith in what I am saying. Only then what I am saying makes sense to you. Shankara Bhagavad Pada says that faith makes the mind concentrated. If your mind is restless and always running after sense pleasures, you will never be able to realize the self. How can a mind that is agitated and attached to gross external things perceive anything that is superfine? It cannot. In the Katha Upanishad, Yama said to Nachiketas that our senses are all always outgoing. I would say they are frittering. Always. The eyes, the ears, the mind, they're all going to the sensory and sense objects, constantly in pursuit of something, as if they're running to catch something. We must reverse the process. That is, we must turn the senses inward so mind becomes calm and you start understanding what you are really after. But this is very difficult to do if you lack basic faith. That a refocusing helps you do that. For that, you need faith. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that the mind was always like a bag of mustard seeds. Suppose there is a leak in a bag of mustard seeds. The mustard seeds will fall out and be scattered all over the place, and it then becomes very difficult, if not challenging, to gather them, especially to gather each particle without losing any one of those mustard seeds and put them back again. Similarly, the leak in the bag is like our attachment to sense enjoyments. Once the mind is scattered on external things, it is extraordinarily challenging to bring it back and focus it on the self. But if you have faith, the faith that the self is the reality, then it becomes easy to concentrate the mind. Once you have control over the mind, you can grasp the subtleties of spiritual truths so very quickly. In fact, it is said that the truth at that point reveals itself to you without you having to chase it. Satyam comes to you and says, I am Satyam, and it reveals to you. This is quite rational. If you really want to know something, your mind will automatically be focused on it, which you have noticed it. However frivolous it would be, once your mind is focused, you will exactly know what you are focused and you will be getting it. And if you are not interested, your mind will be elsewhere. I can give you a simple example. It may be hurtful sometimes. You may be sitting in front of a teacher or sitting in satsangam listening to a very heavy duty lecture like this with so much of philosophy embedded, with Vedanta soaked up. But if your mind is on the NBA finals or Super Bowl game or elsewhere, even though you'll be watching this screen, live satsangam, the ears will not listen to what you are listening, supposed to listen, and eyes will be deliriously vacant even though you are watching the screen. That I have witnessed it quite often. When any of my major programs and fundraisers, etc., happen in multiple halls, in the hall where I have the 70 or 100 or 200 people sitting, compulsorily people will be looking at me and watching me, except that occasionally they are disturbed by the iPhone or iPad. But those who wait in the other hall with another huge television showing the program to those people who are relaxed there, supposing they have some other distraction like an NBA finals or Super Bowl or something else, the mind will only be there. But they will be watching the screen. It has happened a number of times. I've known and I've even made fun of that. That is precisely what is happening here. Your mind has to be tuned to exactly what you want to see. You need to have faith in yourself that I'm focused, and then you will be focused. The mind will get you where you want to. So this is how Krishna ends, as per Narayana Tirtha, the sloka 10. At this point, the gopis get a little bit irritable. They tell Krishna, particularly at the end of the sloka, stanza 10, it is my assumption that that's why Narayana Tirtha was prompted to make the sloka 11. Maybe the gopis asked this question. Hey Krishna, it's easy for you to preach. But if the Sat, as you repeatedly mentioned as the reason for the creation, why is it not perceivable or perceptible? All of you know the difference between perceivable and perceptible. And therefore, how can we say that exists when we cannot see or comprehend that? Please clarify this fundamental question. And maybe that's what prompted Krishna to answer through the stanza 11 that Narayana Tirtha brought out. And that stanza 11 has the quintessence of Chandogya Upanishad, sloka 1 of chapter 13 of 6th Anuvaka of Chandogya. Sindhu janitam salila mishritam ivatma sarvagata ekara satam anugato yaha veda sirasam parichayena suviviktaha tattvam avadharayata sattvam mamo. As I said, the Chandogya 6.13 or 13th chapter, the first sloka, followed by, of course, the amplificatory sloka number 2, both are shown on the slide. That is a narration of what happened as explained in the Chandogya. I will summarize the meaning of 1 and 2 of those two slokas from chapter 13. Uddalaka said to his son, put this lump of salt into water, my dear son. Since your question is how something that's not perceivable or perceptible can be comprehended as the ultimate principle, or that. For that, the answer was, put this lump of salt into water and come to me in the morning. Swetaketu did exactly as his father told. Uddalaka now asked his son, oh my dear son, bring me the salt that you put in the water. Swetaketu looked puzzled and said, Father, I cannot find the salt because it already dissolved in the water. Uddalaka then said, oh my son, okay, now forget it. If we can't bring the salt, I'll give you a different route. Drink the water from the top or the surface of the vessel. Swetaketu took a spoonful or a ladleful, drank it, and now Uddalaka, the father, asked, how does it taste? Swetaketu said, it is saline. How would you expect that to taste? Uddalaka then smiled and said, drink it from the middle. In other words, don't put the ladle on the top, dip it a little bit and take it from the middle and now drink it. How does it taste? Of course, if it is modern day son, if the father has said like that, the son would have, first thing they would have said is use some very strong language to the father and said, have you gone a little mad there? But being the good old son Swetaketu in those years, at those era, didn't say anything, but simply said, Father, it is saline. Now, Uddalaka then finally said, now drink it from the bottom. How does it taste? It's also saline. Then Uddalaka said, throw the water away and then come to me. Swetaketu did that. The father said to him, there is salt in every part of the water or particle of water, and yet you cannot see it. Similarly, O Saumya, Sat or the self is here in this body, yet you cannot see it in the body as to which part of the body has the Sat. It's pervasive, just like the salt was pervasive in the vessel of water. The question that is being examined is, why are we not able to perceive the self, which is the essence of our being? Namely, how is that you cannot see the salt which pervades the water, agram madhyam moolam, and still you cannot see the salt? The answer is extended here. It is because the self is all pervasive. The self and I are one and the same. If the self were something separate from me, then I could see that. Can I see myself? I can only see myself if I have a mirror or something else like water. I can have a reflection and see what I am. Or something A reflective surface can show what I am, but I cannot see myself without the equipment or the aid of a mirror or something like that. But there is nothing but the self, so how can I see it? It's not possible. Because you don't see something, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The process of seeing involves separate entities, the seer and the seen, that is, the subject and the object. These two must be separate. Then only the process of seeing can take place. But if there is only one, who sees then whom? The Upanishad gives two examples of how things may exist that we do not perceive. One is of the banyan tree and the seed, and the other is the salt and water. In the case of a banyan tree, you could see the seed, but not the banyan tree per se in the seed. The seed is almost empty when you break it, but banyan tree comes out of it. That is one example in terms of perceiving it. Whereas, when you put salt in water, it completely dissolves and you don't see salt anymore. You no longer see that, but that doesn't mean salt is not there because the entire water is saline. Similarly, just because we do not see the self, that doesn't prove it does not exist. Reality is not something that is perceptible to our sense organs. It is Vakyam Anatita. The reality is beyond speech and mind, beyond thought. Words fail to describe it and our mind cannot grasp it, and because it is so fine and so subtle. Those of you who are familiar with Sri Ramakrishna Aratrikam, a great work of Swami Vivekananda, who sang a beautiful praise on Sri Ramakrishna. Vivekananda says, Namo Namo Prabhu Akyamanatita Manovachanai Kadar Jyotira Jyoti Ujjala Hridi Gandhara Jyotira Jyoti Ujjala Hridi Kandara Tumi Tamo Banjanaha Tumi Tamo Banjanaha. Vivekananda pleads to his guru. It's Sanskritized Bengali. Namo Namo Prabhu Vakya Manatita Mano Vachanaika Adhar Jyotira Jyoti Ujjala Hridigandhara Tumi Tamo Banjanahar. He pleads to his Acharya. Oh, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, oh my Guru, salutations, salutations, oh Lord, who is beyond the speech and the mind. This is the same Vivekananda asked too many questions to Ramakrishna and said, if you don't show me God, I don't trust that you are my Acharya because you are not capable. Finally, when the realization set in and Vivekananda was able to see God in himself, then he goes into ecstasy and starts singing the Aratrikam. That is how he calls Ramakrishna. Oh Bhagavani, you are Bhagavan to me. Acharya, you are Bhagavan. You are beyond speech and the mind. You are the substratum of the mind and speech. Mano Vachanaika Adhar. Jyotira Jyoti Ujjala Hridi Gandhara. Oh Bhagavani, who is the light of the light? Jyotira Jyoti Ujjala Hridi Gandhara. Please kindle the light within the cave of my heart. Tumi Tamo Vanjanahar. You are the remover of my tamas, or darkness of ignorance. He puts it in one simple sloka because he calls him Vakya Manatita. Oh Acharya, you are beyond the speech and the mind. That's what Upanishad says. Brahman is beyond the speech and the mind. In order for you to understand Brahman, you should realize your Atman is in sync with Brahman. That's what Krishna says, oh gopis, you may be Atmans according to individually perceptible and perceivable, but when you perceive and understand the perceptibility of this body, form in front of you, that is, this form is yours, then automatically you understand beyond the speech and mind that I am the Omkara and I am the ultimate Sat. The self is not something on the relative plane that we can see or touch. Our sense organs are very limited. Our eyes can see things only up to a point or up to a distance, depending on your bright eyesight. You may see maybe half a mile, 1 mile, depending on the clear, perceptible elements outside you. In a snowy day, you can't see anything. On a clear day, you can see much even farther. So in order to perceive, there are many things around us that our eyes cannot see. Similarly, with our hearing and other organs, there is a limitation. So in order to perceive the self, we must go beyond the relative plane of all these limitations to the transcendental level. Shankara says that this body is a product of food, or anna, or earth, or water, or fire, and the self is within this body. Though you cannot see the self, it permeates the body, just as the salt permeates the water. Krishna says, finally, O gopis, therefore the real Sat, if you have a problem, is the supreme cause of the whole. That much you understand. Once you understand that's the meaning of Omkara, and that is me, and that is my form. Omkara is my form. Sat is my form. Realize beyond doubt that you are therefore my form. When the realization comes unto you, you have faith. The faith leads to that realization that I am you. Then you won't have any more questions. You don't want to look at me as a Yadava and seek me with lust. You will only want to identify yourself with me and merge unto me. In the next stanza, namely the 12th, he says, Baddhanayano vanabhuvi pratibhimuktaha prashnam upalabhya nagaram punaravapa yadguru matam punaravapa nijabuddhiya tattvam avadharayata satyamiti mamom. Why did Tirtha bring this out to Krishna to talk about realization? Maybe he was motivated by chapter 6, section 15 of Chandogya Upanishad again, and particularly the very first sloka of chapter 15 is very relevant. In fact, this is the narration of how it happened in the sloka 1 of chapter 15. Purusham somyo topatapinam jnatayaha pariyupasate janasi mam iti miti tasya yavanna vang manasi sampadyate manaha prano pranas tejasi tejaha parasyam devatayam tavad janati iti. When a person is very seriously ill, O Soumya, his relatives sit around him, lament and ask him, hey, do you recognize me? Oh fellow, please. Appa, Tata, my father, grandfather, brother, sister, do you recognize me? Do you recognize me? So long as his speech does not merge with his mind, and his mind with his prana, and his prana with the heat in his body, and the heat with the Supreme Self, the fellow in the body will be able to recognize them. What does it mean? And why is this sloka just taken exactly to stanza 12? Stanza 12 says, when one's mind and other faculties completely merge into Supreme Soul, that's the point when no longer the body which contains the soul has no activity, and the soul does not recognize anyone's relative because the soul has left. When all else perishes, that which remains and is itself imperishable, comprehend me as the principle as Om and truth. That's what that sloka 12 says. Everything goes back there and everything comes from there. That's a standard answer. Even though his breathing has stopped, as long as the body is warm, people don't want to remove him and throw him out. The person is still alive. Krishna says finally, O gopis, therefore the real Sat is the supreme cause of the whole and the meaning of Omkara. The realization is the key to everything. And that's my form. If you end up realizing beyond doubt that you are therefore my form and you are me, all these questions will no longer become relevant. In the next 4 stanzas that come 13, 14, 15 and 16 in the Raga Varali, this is taken to the next level, but for due to time constraints, we will do 13 and 14 today and leave the rest for the next session.
Yatra layamedi mana adi paramatman kanyadanu pasyatina bandhu janamecha sarva vilaye pyavilayam vidavachittam tattvam avadarayatam satyamiti mamam आक्रियतया सकल वृत्तिय त्रिचित्वात् नैव गणनादि विषयो यदवसिद्धं तत्परशु सत्प्रभु सत्यपरिगुप्त तत्त्वम् अवधारयत सत्यमिति मामोऽयम् इन्नु कमनीयम् अबला यदनुभूतं सर्वमनुभूतिमपहाय न तु तत्त्वं नित्यमनु भूति सुख विग्रहमचिन्त्यं तात्त्वमवधारयत सत्यमिति मामो तत्सदिति सर्वविषयेष्वनुगतं यत् பாதகதயா பிரியதயா பரிசிழிட்டம் மானவிதி மேய விதிஹீனமதிரிக்தம் வித்வதனுபூதமிவ தாரயத சத்யம் வித்வதனுபூதமிவ தாரயத சத்யம் வித்வதானுபூதய தாரயத சத்யம்.
यत्रलयमेति मन आदि परमात्मन् अन्यदनु पश्यति न बन्धुजनमेषः सर्वविलयेऽप्यविलयं यद वसिष्ठं तत्त्वमवधारयत satyamiti माम्. Om. Why did Tirtha bring this out of Krishna to talk about realization again in the unusual manner? In fact, Chandogya Upanishad, we came up to chapter 15 and sloka 1, but we are going a little bit one step backward. Because Narayana Tirtha tries to explain fundamentally about realization, a step backward from the 13 is nothing but a slight step backward from the stanza 12. For that, we need the help of Chandogya 6.14, that is the 14th chapter, first sloka. Let us now look at the first and second sloka of the chapter 14 of the sixth main chapter, Anuvaka of Chandogya. I have provided the sloka as well as the summarized meaning there in the slide. Please focus on that. In the first sloka, the father tells the son, everything is focused on that particular place or location. Oh son, when a fellow is brought blindfolded from his original country, namely Gandhara country, and brought to some kind of a forest and in a deserted place, he is left there. He is still blindfolded. He turns sometimes to the east, sometimes to the north, sometimes to the south, and sometimes to the west, started shouting. Because he does not know. And his blindfold cannot be removed also because his hands also have been tied. He shouts, I've been brought here blindfolded, I've been left here blindfolded. I don't know what to do. This is the sloka 1. In the sloka 2, there is a solution. And as someone may remove that person's blindfold and say, hey, my dear friend, now your eyes are open. I've taken the blindfold away. Now you see that path? That is the way to go to Gandhara. Go this way. Go back to your place. Run. Don't even look back. And the intelligent man goes from one village to the another. Because he was in a forest or desolate place, he doesn't know the route. But he has been let go now. And the blindfold has been removed, he starts really running around from one village to the other, but he's smart enough to ask his way and relies on the information that people give, disseminates the information and things using his own sense of direction, oh, this may be right, and finally reaches Gandhara, the place from where he was removed and brought blindfolded. Similarly, a person who gets a teacher attains knowledge. Just like the fellow who opened his blindfold and said, go in this direction, you will go back to your place. An Acharya takes care of the fellow who is completely bamboozled, doesn't know which direction to turn to. Acharya is the one who shows him the path. His delay is only as long as he is not free of his body. After that, he becomes merged in the self. That is how the Chandogya finishes. Yavanna vimoksheta sampatya iti tavadeva chiram. The fellow's delay is only as long as he is not free of his body. And when he is free of that, he becomes merged with the self. He has no more confusion as to the direction where he has to go because an Acharya has guided him in the right path. The question being considered here is, if I am ignorant, how will my ignorance be removed? If I can be removed through the instructions of a teacher, but he must be a competent teacher. Supposing that fellow is another blind fellow. Can a blind person lead another blind person? No, it will be nothing but a disaster. Instead of going to Gandhara country, this fellow may end up going in the wrong direction in the deep of the forest, while the wild animals will have a feast of him. So there is sure to be a disaster if the blindfolded man is guided by another blindfolded man or some idiot. So the selection of an Acharya is very, very important. Or the selection of the right guide is important to seek your destination. In this verse, the Upanishad gives an example of a person led blindfolded into a forest and left there. We are like that person. We are blind, ignorant, and we are unhappy and suffer because of our ignorance. This world of attachment is like a dense forest. Though it is self-created, we do not know the way out. We need someone to help us, someone who knows the way. We need a very good Acharya. Shankara said the word Medhavi means one who is capable of understanding. You may have a good teacher and you may have been given also proper instructions. But if you do not have the necessary jnanam, or you don't know how to use your intelligence, which is dormant, and you don't know that you possess intelligence, a good Acharya is also a waste there. Now, suppose you have a good teacher and also you attain some self-knowledge. To get the information from the teacher, process it, use your intelligence for the benefit and try to get your realization. That is where you attain liberation. So according to Vedanta, when you attain self-knowledge, out of your passion to attain it, out of your faith to attain it, out of your trust to attain it, and thereby when you have self-knowledge, you have the guidance of a good teacher who is capable of taking you through the path, you automatically attain liberation. This is Shankara. But the Upanishad says there is still one snack. What is that snack? Our prarabdha karma is a snack. Karma means the results of our actions. If I do something good, I will experience a good result. And if I do something bad, I must suffer. This is something we all know. Vedanta says there are three kinds of karma. One kind is called Sanchita karma. It is our karma that has been accumulated from one birth to the another. We have done so many things and all these actions are waiting to bear fruit at the appropriate time. Another kind of karma is called Agami karma. While we are experiencing the fruits of our past actions, we are also creating new karma now by our present actions. Some of these actions will bear fruit immediately, but many others may take a lot of time. There is a third kind of karma called prarabdha karma. It is that which has already started bearing fruit in our present life, depending on what you have already done. According to Vedanta, if you have attained self-knowledge, both your Sanchita karma and your Agami karma are destroyed very quickly. Shankara says that they are burned in the fire of Jnanagni, or the fire of knowledge. In other words, according to Shankara, the two karma that can be easily dispensed with or cleared up are Sanchita karma and Agami karma. But your prarabdha karma will continue. It is the momentum. If you are to suffer from cancer or something else, you cannot escape it. You have to wait until your prarabdha karma exhausts itself. This is what Bhagavan Ramana said. This is what Paramacharya said. This is what great Acharya said. You may be able to control some of the Sanchita karma and Agami karma with your self-knowledge and Jnanagni, etc., thanks to a good teacher. But when your prarabdha karma really overrides everything and the momentum goes on, it has to exhaust itself. That's the reason we see some of the great people who are wonderful people following the rightful discipline taught by the acharyas, etc., still continue to have suffering and still continue to go through pains till they get their mukti. So there are two examples of prarabdha karma. One example is, suppose you are cutting down a tree or sawing a tree down. You saw it through completely, but it keeps standing there. It does not immediately fall down. Then a little breeze comes and it falls over. You'll be cutting the tree, all right, making a lot of effort. It doesn't fall. All of a sudden, there is a waft of breeze. It becomes a very powerful wind. The cut tree falls without much effort from you. Prarabdha karma is like the tree standing for a while, waiting to fall down, but falls down with some other trigger. That is the wind. Then there is the example of the arrow that has been shot out. Once you shoot an arrow, you cannot call it back. The same is the case with prarabdha karma. It goes on till the force that has put it into motion has been expended. Now, if you have attained self-knowledge, your actions will not be like those of an ordinary person. Whatever you do from then on is for the good of others. Shankara says a liberated person does nothing out of desire. If you do something out of desire, that action binds you, even if it is something good. Remember this. A liberated person does nothing out of desire. Because if you do something out of desire, that karma binds you, even if it is something good, not for your good, but the action binds you. But there is a small snag here or a catch. Very often a person does something good out of desire for fame or for power. People may say, I do so many spiritual things. Ask that question. Is it out of desire for fame that my YouTube posting should be seen by 1 million people? Because ultimately you will calculate how much 1 million will produce me in dollars. Or is it that everybody should say, oh, what a great man he is. He's giving so much information to us. We are sitting in one corner, watching the YouTube, we get everything. So either for fame or for power or for any other selfish motive, if someone does good, there also that action binds you. You are not on the path of liberation. A liberated person, according to Shankara, will do nothing that is against the spirit of the scriptures. His actions will always be right because he feels like doing it right with the zero expectation from the results of that. And they will be only for the good of others, called Lokahitartham, or for God, Ishwarartham. So you can do good, spiritually good things and other things. You can do fundraisers for the temple. You can do so much for everything else, provided there is no self-motive, fame, power, or something is going to come back to you. So Lokahitartham or for Ishwarartham, when you do something good, that doesn't add up to karma. It doesn't add up to your prarabdha karma, positive or negative. Comprehend that aspect as the principle. And that is the principle. That's me. Om. And that is the truth. Satyam and Sat. And Krishna once again says, if you understand all this, the karmas and why prarabdha karma can also be won over, provided you know that you are not doing anything for your own personal benefit. Do it for Lokahitartham and Ishwarartham. Then you will have a realization that I am not a Yadava boy, I am God, and nobody else other than you. Then I am Sat, I am Omkara, and you are also the same. Finally, in that sequence, the 14th sloka says, Akriyataya sakala vikriya drishitvad naiva hananadi vishayo yadavasittam tapta parasus prugiva satya pariguptaha tattvam avadarayata satyamiti mam om. Actually, alike in depth, in the cessation of all activity and in the outward appearance of all other attributes, what remains of the one who has realized the truth and one who has not are different, as are the innocent and guilty in the ordeal of fire. This is the meaning of that. Why do we say the entire explanation of Vedanta tied up to innocence or guilt? And there is some very strange notion given here. One's innocence or guilt is established by being asked to grasp the red-hot axe by hand. The farmer is liberated from the shackles of samsara, while the writer is not. One may wonder, what is this, sir? Very strange example. The answer for this puzzle comes from chapter 6, section 16, Chandogya Upanishad, because this is where Naranatirtha has taken this aspect of Vedanta and inserted it here. If you look at the chapter 16, the very first sloka in Chandogya Upanishad, which you see on the screen now, what is liberation? Liberation is the state in which I know I am the self. I know that I am never born and shall never die. When I know that I am free, then I am aptakama, that is fully satisfied. There is nothing more to achieve because nothing more exists outside of myself. I become one and the same. Ullum puramum undru. There is nothing out, there is nothing in, everything is one and the same. If there is something outside myself, then I might think, oh, let me have that. But if I am everything, if everything exists within me, what is there to desire for? Sarvam kalu idam Brahma. In other words, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. One of the four Mahavakyas. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma is Sarvam Kalu Idam Brahma. All this is Brahman. And I am that Brahman. I am free, immortal. There is no more birth and death for me. Now here the question arises. What is the test of whether you have self-knowledge or not? The Upanishad gives another illustration. Suppose someone is brought to you and you are told he has committed a theft. You ask him if he has done it and if he denies it, but all the evidence seems to point to him that he is the culprit. What do you do? In those good old days, don't think I'm subscribing to that, but in those ancient days, they had a test, or rather a cruel test. This is as per Purana. They put the blade of an axe in fire. And then when it is red hot, they would just extend it and ask the suspect to use his hand to put it tightly clasp it. If his hand gets burned, he was considered guilty because he was covered, as it were, by falsehood. But the belief was if his hand was not burnt and the heat, the red hot iron did not affect him, he was considered innocent because he was protected by truth. Don't ask me for any scientific evidence of this. This is what good old times, there was a belief. Similarly, if we do not have self-knowledge, we'll continue to burn in this world. The only corollary makes more sense on other mundane examples. We will continue to burn in the world because we have no self-knowledge, no desire. We will be born again and again. But if we have attained self-knowledge, we will be liberated. Truth will set us free. Self-knowledge is not something you can demonstrate or take out on show. The only proof of it is that we do not have to continue in this cycle of birth and death. Nevertheless, when a person attains self-knowledge, he is not the same anymore. His attitude towards others changes. For instance, he can never hurt anyone because if he hurts anyone, he hurts himself. Then again, no one is a stranger to him. He accepts everyone and he's happy. If someone is happy, he is happy no matter what. If someone is in pain, he knows he is in pain, but it doesn't matter to him. If someone has done well, he feels proud of that person, as if it is his own success. He can never be jealous because he feels one with everybody. Well, in conclusion, in view of the depth of Vedanta to which Naratirtha goes in each of the stanzas and then ratchets it up from stanza 15 to 20, I would therefore stop here and take up the remainder stanzas 15 to 20 in the next session. Thank you.
Narayana 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 Hare Krishna Guru